Hi, I'm Jason Doust. After a recent conversation with Jason Belmonte, he asked me if I'd prepare the following presentation to talk about lane patterns, and in particular, the house shot versus the PBA shot, which I've entitled, Why Lots of Bowlers Out-Average the Pros Every US Open Week. Now, why the US Open shot in particular? Well, the US Open is the hardest of all the PBA patterns, and it provides the starkest contrast, so it gives us a nice clear picture of what's going on. One of the questions that tournament players get asked a lot when the US Open is on is why the US Open scores so low? I mean, aren't the pros supposed to be good? A lot of people ask this question, and a particular line we hear a lot of is, guys in my league shoot better numbers than this. And it's true, guys in my league shoot better numbers than this. So what's the story? Let's have a closer look. Here's a clue for you. The following table shows the top 10 averages from the 68th US Open last year, and league averages from Brunswick Zone Carolier where the US Open is held. Now if you look at this, the bottom player in league averages, Christopher Cameroni, holds a respectable 223. He would have trounced the competition. He would have beaten Norm Duke comfortably in the US Open. So what's the difference? It's the same house, it's the same lanes. They are, however, using a very different oiling procedure. That is, a much tougher pattern. So first let's ask about oil. What is oil? Well, oil, is slippery stuff. Nobody's surprised there. But where there is oil on the lane, there's no friction and hence no hook. Your ball only grips the dry lane surface. So in effect, an oil pattern is also a friction pattern, which is good to know because we need to know where friction lives because that's where hook lives. Looking at a bowling lane, there are three fundamental parts we're interested in with regard to oiling patterns. There's the heads, the front 15 to 17 feet of the lane. This is where the most oil is applied. The next 30 odd feet of the lane, is called the mid lane. Not surprising because it's the middle of the lane. In the mid lane, oil is no longer applied to the buffing wheel in the machine, but is buffed out. The oil gets thinner as it approaches the last part of the lane, called the back end. The back end, with the crunched up writing there, is generally kept dry. The back end provides the hook that you see on the lane. The ball will slide cleanly through the heads, begin its transition in the mid lane, and then will change direction properly in the back end, creating that vital angle which is so important for corner pin carry. So starting with a house shot, I'm taking Kegel Easy Street here as a typical house pattern. There's several parameters that are important here, and I'm not going to bore you with them, but notice it's medium length, medium volume, and that combination provides a sharp change in direction down the lane. That means the corner pins get knocked out a lot better than they otherwise would. The ratio of oil, which is the amount of oil in the centre of the lane compared to the amount of oil towards the edge of the lane, is a whopping 10 to 1. That's very steep. This is also known as a blocked lane. You may also hear it termed as a wall or a ditch. And what that term means is that there is free hook to the outside of the pattern and that there is free hold to the inside of the pattern. The darker the blue you see on this graph, the heavier the oil. So how do we play the house shot? Well, the house shot has some built-in mistake area around the 10th board, the second arrow. On the fresh, we want to play around that area and send the ball out to the right, around the 8th or 9th board. We're basically throwing the ball into that dry part of the lane where there's hook built in. Many angles can score well on this, and many bowling balls work quite well on it as well. There's just one problem with the whole theory, and that is that reactive resin bowling balls remove oil from the lane. Reactive resin balls are so porous, they actually suck the oil off the lane like a sponge, but sucking water up off a floor. So looking at the house shot as applied to a lane, we can see that it's got a built-in hook spot. Those lighter blue areas are much drier than the dark blue areas inside. So when we start the night and we play around the second arrow, the ball hooks into the pocket. And as our reactive resin bowling ball sucks up a bit of oil off the lane, we move in a little bit. And then we follow with that inwards. And then you'll find some guys that are really hooking the ball will get into the deeper part of the pattern, use more volume, but come out around the same kind of hook spot. Basically, the house shot is designed so that shots that are missed to the right recover, and shots that are missed inside will hold the pocket. There's lots of angles that work, and there's lots of different bowling balls that will work. The house shot is designed to have fun and go bowl league. So looking at the house shot, we know it's got a hook spot built into it. We know that there's free hook to the outside, it's called recovery area, and there's free hold to the inside, and that's called hold area, not surprisingly. The house shot has built-in mistake area. You've got room to the left and the right, and it gives you a very good look. Many angles work, and the key is to throw the ball into that big hook spot out there. Get the ball to bounce back, create nice angle, and get good pin carry. The US Open shot, however, is the same length as the house shot. It's a higher volume, and that's because there's a lot more oil outside the middle of the lane now, which makes it harder to carry the corner pins and gives you less area. That 1-to-1 ratio is dead flat. There's no built-in room, no built-in hook, no built-in hold. It's all up to you. So with no built-in area, there's no free hook, there's no free hold. You've got to earn it. And it does provide something though, something called an out of bounds, which we'll discuss in a moment. Now the house shot, as we've discussed, has free hook to the outside and free hold to the inside. When we lay the US Open shot over the top of this, all that free stuff gets taken away. There's no free lunch on the US Open. So shots missed to the right never recover. They're a 6 count, or worse. Shots missed to the left very rarely hold the pocket. They can be a 6 count as well, usually of a much worse kind. And it's the complete opposite experience to the house shot essentially. No miss room. The slightest miss gets you in a lot of trouble. It's dead hard work. The artist formerly known as Richie Allen once described the US Open as like bowling along the ridge of a roof. When you miss slightly to the right, the ball rolls down that side of the roof. When you miss slightly to the left, the ball rolls down that side of the roof. But a hook spot can develop in the US Open, but it's got its own way of doing it. When the pattern is fresh, you should stay straighter on these lanes and play up the boards to get to the pocket. You don't want to be throwing the ball away from the pocket early because you don't want to be creating any possibility for more change in direction than you need. Keeping it simple will work. As you burn a little spot in it, remember, your reactive resin bowling ball removes oil. You want to move a bit left and catch a bit of oil to the left of you to be able to get the ball to the same break point. And so you follow it in. And eventually, a teeny weeny hook spot will open up down there where that yellow circle is. But you've got to remember, it's only very small, and to the right of it, there's something very treacherous. The out of bounds. The out of bounds still contains fresh oil, and shots thrown out here will not recover. Anything that misses right really misses a long way right, so be very careful of the out of bounds. So we know there's some area on the US Open. Where is it? Well, that all depends on who was on the pair before you, how they removed the oil with their bowling ball, what angles they played the lanes. This can be very important information. If you can make your lane change fast and see the last few frames of the people before you, you can get some good information on that pair. So over the course of a day, this flat oil pattern gets worn down in a rather difficult way. Remember, we started out fairly straight. I'll make the angles bigger so we can get through this faster. We move in as the day goes on, maintaining a similar breakpoint, and by the end of the day, we start getting very deep indeed. In fact, once you get into the late squads, you'll find a lot of the power players run out of head area, so they start throwing the ball over the gutter to try and get the ball to the pocket and actually carry. So, there's larger changes to be made on this pattern than at league. Shots missed right will never recover because that out of bounds is still there. Shots missed left, you're going to miss a long way left. And just to cap it off, you're losing your entry angle into the pocket all day long. So now you understand why scores are so low on the US Open. So how do we play this beast? Well, on the fresh and the transition, you want to keep the balls going straight through the front. You still want some hook in the back, but not an angular motion. We're looking to control the motion and get to the pocket. Later on in the day, we have to move in. We have to keep that hook spot continually to the outside of where we're playing, because that's the only little bit of area we're going to get all day. Your moves will vary from pair to pair, and they become more angular. But again, beware of the out of bounds. You can't make it too angular because if you get the ball too far right, it's too far right. It never gets back. And be prepared to play anywhere on the lane in the US Open, because you'll probably have to. So comparing the house shot to the US Open, on the house shot, everyone knows where to play it. It's the same each week. We've all got a pretty good idea. Whereas on the US Open, it's not the same from game to game, lane to lane, or even shot to shot. It can move in front of you. On the house shot, that large volume inside holds up longer, so you only require small moves to stay on line. In the US Open, how other players play will affect you, and vice versa. You won't make a lot of friends going to the US Open with heavily sanded equipment. On the house shot, there's free area built into the shot. On the US Open, it's the exact opposite. There's nothing to play with. On the house shot, you can score from a lot of different angles and make it work. On the US Open condition, the lanes tell you where to play. You have to work it out from there, using your brains and your equipment. On the house shot, it's a forgiving condition. It's designed for fun. It's designed for a social night out and some competition. The US Open is a brutal condition. It's seriously tough, and it's designed to be the ultimate test of bowling skill. And in fact, it's been described as that by many players, including Pete Weber, 4-time winner of the US Open. So imagine for a moment what winning a US Open involves. You've got brutally tough lanes. You're up against the best players in the world. There's almost a week of hard grind, and it all comes down finally to one game on TV. Ultimately, everyone who wins the US Open truly is a champion. So now you know a little bit about lane oil, you know why some lanes are so much tougher than others, you know why league scores are so high, and that's because house shots are designed that way, and that's okay. You know why the US Open scores are so low, and that's because it's so darned hard, and that's okay too. But at least now you know. So thank you for your time. This presentation was brought to you by Clean Edge, the only Australian-made, USB-C approved cleaner on the market. I'm Jason Doust. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you've got something out of this, because smarter bowlers become better bowlers.